Rintu and Sushmit, nice to have you here for the Human Rights Film Festival Berlin. I had the honor to already see your documentary, Writing with Fire, and both of you are the directors of this amazing documentary. When I saw the film, it's basically about women who work as journalists in a news platform that is all led by female journalists, which is really impressive. But I also felt like it's not only about journalism and female empowerment, it's about a lot more. It's about power and democracy, politics. I also found that this news platform was already founded in 2002, I guess, and you decided to do this documentary now, or started filming a few years ago. What made you choose to do this documentary just now? Was there a particular moment or situation when you felt that's a movie we want to do?
Oh, the moment just appeared in front of our eyes while surfing on the internet. We saw a photo story about Khabar Lahariya and got to know about this amazing and unique newspaper that's run entirely by women and Dalit women. So it just like one of the first questions that we asked ourselves was, what does an organization that's run by women look like? How do they negotiate the world around them? How do they find themselves? How do they create this unique space for themselves? And the fact that they were journalists was double interesting, because they are negotiating with different kinds of power structures in a space where there are no women, or journalism is not considered the job of a woman. And so being around for 14 years means that you have recentered the narrative. And we met them at a very interesting point where they were shifting from print to digital. So it felt like Khabar Lahariya 2.0. And we just wanted to see this journey from the inside. And that's how we started off in 2016.
Is there anything in particular that you had in mind that you wanted to achieve with that film, besides just looking behind the scenes? What do you want to achieve when people watch your film?
On the face of it, it was a story of a newspaper. And what we were looking at was, are they going to be successful making this shift from print to digital? Which was, at that point in time, a conversation that most major mainstream newspapers across the world were anyways having. But I think what actually interested us was the story of Meera and Sunita and Shamkali, the journalists, because they were all at very different stages in their life. They were facing different sets of challenges, and yet there was a certain universality to their story as mothers, daughters, wives, colleagues. And I think what really interested us was, how do Dalit women, as Rintu said, negotiate through these spaces that are often hostile and more often than not spaces that no Dalit woman has ever tread into. So this is the only newspaper that's run entirely by women in the country, and the fact that to see women from the Dalit community speak truth to power, they're really attacking a 3,000-year-old system of patriarchy in this country. And I think that is essentially what drew us to them. And that's something that was at the heart of what we were doing. How do we present their story as a story of power, as a story of resistance, but at the heart of it, a story of journalism that would be universal, but would be told from a really personal inner space. And that's essentially, these are some of the threads that we kept in mind while we were filming and then editing.
Yeah, and I think you did a really great job by doing this. You already touched on this point that all of the founders are from the Dalit community or Dalit caste. I'm obviously wondering, as someone who's not living in India, and by my understanding, the caste system is not existing anymore, but it's really often that you, in these films, that you see situations where the Dalit, obviously, it looks like they belong to a different society. Why is this still the case, and how do people handle these situations and the system?
You're right. The caste system is constitutionally banned, but the practice of it, because it has been included in the very fabric of Indian culture, continues to thrive. And like all systems of oppression, something very archaic has modernized itself in very nefarious ways. So it exists in less obvious ways, maybe in cities, but in very cruel and articulate ways in the rural parts of the country. And I think the first thing is to acknowledge that it exists, and at very different levels in our social, cultural, political, personal spaces, and then to question it. And that's really one of the things that the film is doing, because it's centering the narrative on these women whose very act of stepping out of their homes and occupying the space of journalism is an act of resistance. And there are generations of people who have fought the caste system in many, many different political, cultural, inventive ways. But this is unique. This is reclaiming your voice and saying that when Dalit women hold accountable people in power, things change. And this organization is a testament to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm also wondering, I mean, the Dalit is the so-called lowest class, I guess, in India. And as we already said, all of the founders are women from the Dalit caste. So how did you experience your protagonists? They are not only just female, but the Dalit, and they managed to really run this news platform for a long time. What makes them so different? I mean, you spent quite some time with them. What do you feel like? Why are they so powerful and so self-confident to be able to do this?
I think the fact that, so personally speaking, we were really charmed by Meera and her team. They are innovative, they're radical, they're constantly ahead of the curve, so to speak. So when they were having this conversation, early on in the film, there's a scene where Meera is making a pitch to shift from print to digital. And in that meeting itself, we figured out who our key characters in the film are going to be. And I think that there's something very affecting in the way that Meera presented herself. And I think that over the course of the few years that we spent on the ground filming with them, there was a sense of trust that was built between us, and they allowed us into their worlds from where we could actually see what it means to be a Dalit woman, and they are working in some of the most difficult geographies of the country, where there is a constant threat to not only the work you're doing, but to yourself as well. But the fact that these women have been able to negotiate through these systems of power. They've been journalists for 14 years before they decided to make this shift. So they're very savvy with how the systems work. They have very strong systems of alliances. There are people within the administration, within the police system, who are silently supporting their work. And in that sense, they've been able to build this protective mechanism around the work that they do. So while what they're doing is extremely risky, and I feel that that's the case for any independent journalist now in any part of the world. I think journalism as a field of work has come under immense threat, and Khabar Lahariya is no different. But the fact that they have been able to translate their position into a position of power is something that is something that we discovered through the course of making this film.
And at the same time, I think Meera is saying that in this movie, that on the film, that it's so important, and that journalism is basically for her the essence of democracy. So how do you, could you explain us a bit how's the situation for journalists and the freedom of press at the moment in India?
A reflection of what's happening globally. I mean, you can be a journalist in the Philippines, or you can be a journalist in Brazil. And if you are speaking truth to power, what you're doing is essentially risky. And there is a big shrinking of the independent media across the world. And I think our region is really a reflection of that. I think one of the reasons why we also were so invested in bringing this story to the world was to actually talk about a template of journalism that is not only surviving, but thriving. And it's coming from protagonists you least expect to succeed, because these are women who have never had access to education, have never had access to technology. So you would obviously expect them to not come this far. But the fact that they have not only grown, but they have grown exponentially, gives me some kind of hope as a storyteller, because that tells me that there's a huge demand for the kind of work that they're doing in the region. And I can only hope that more institutions like Khabar Lahariya spawn themselves across the world, and we have more people, as I often say, speaking truth to power. So,
yeah. I try to pronounce this Kaba Lahari, is Laharia?
Almost, you're there.
How popular is this news platform in India, and how is it perceived also by the society nowadays that Dalit and female journalists are having such a big reach?
One of the reasons why Khabar Lahariya decided to shift to digital after 15 years of print was to increase their reach and diversify that reach, because they realized that because literacy was a barrier, women weren't really engaging in rural areas with the medium of the newspaper. With this shift, they've been watching it very carefully, and now more and more women are getting connected to the news that they're creating because of this amazing power of technology, and how technology, now in our circles is a very favorite villain of how things are going wrong. And it's like really like fire that in their hands it's doing something completely different. And so what we've been able to witness behind the cameras is, in the past 5 years, very steadily, slowly, they have grown. Their popularity has increased. The journalists are more recognizable, which also acts as a shield to protect them. They've diversified the kind of programming that they do. There are many more editorials. There are shows. So with that popularity, you can see that people are more interested in the kind of content that they are creating, and it's a very exciting space to be in. We finished filming in late 2019, early 2020, and in the past 2 years, when the pandemic hit, they've totally changed their way of functioning and grown with partnerships and collaborations. So nothing's been able to stop them. Touch wood.
Yeah. My last question for both of you is actually, I think would all agree that the protagonists in this film were really outstanding and really impressive, and at some situations funny and bold. And what is basically the feeling or the thing you learned from them, or the takeaway you took with you after making this film and spending so much time with these women?
I would say that, Meera for me is someone who is showing me that another world is possible. More and more we are, going down the rabbit hole of cynicism with what's happening across the planet. And I feel that a lot of us are wondering, what can we really do to make a change? And I think that it's women like Meera who actually are shining the light and fighting the good fight. And the fact that, there's just so much, it's so easy for her to give up, right? She has so many obstacles in her path. She doesn't have the luxury of a caste or a class, or the luxury of access. And despite all of these odds, to be running a digital news institution successfully, and to be doing it for all the right things, because you believe that democracy is the essence of your nation, and that is the lifeblood of the country. And the conviction with which she's been working, and the conviction with which she's raised many more journalists like Sunita and Shamkali. So, it's a model for me that's a model of hope. And it really tells me that another world is possible if we really set our hearts to it. So, yeah, that's what I took out of Khabar Lahariya's story.
I think for me, I learned to define courage, and I saw courage in action, at home, in the professional space. And then what I also took away very strongly is that, a single life matters. One person can stand up and things can change, but it's so important to also forge relationships of like-minded people, to surround yourself with people who believe in that vision, so that you become a force. And that's what this idea of, okay, we want to start a newspaper, it's going to be run by women, but to just band them together as a working machine that's innovative, that's witty, that lives life to the fullest. I think deep systemic change happens then, when people are truly motivated that our lives can be better. We can be the reason why other people's life can be better. So as an artist, that's a very strong takeaway for me.
Thank you so much, both of you, obviously, for taking the time today, and also for this amazing documentary that we had the chance to have a look behind the scenes and see this protagonist.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.